All right, so let's really quick, before we end this session, I want to give you the introduction to deception detection. So there is no such thing as deceptive behavior. It doesn't exist. If someone tells you that they're going to teach you how to detect lies, it might not be very true. If someone tells you they can detect the probability of deception, that's a little bit more of an accurate statement. If you look at the behavioral table of elements, all of those things on the right, all those things that are in the gray blocks, those are all 4.0 deception rating scale indicator behaviors. And all of them are just a 4. And all of them only measure stress. So there are questioning techniques of course, in our interrogation courses to trip someone up, make them reveal themselves, make them start telling the truth, whether they like it or not. And that's the way to do deception detection. But what the reason that this is part of the 6MX is that all of us need to have the ability to spot stress and reactionaries. Like someone is not telling us the full story, someone might be covering something up. And this is especially beneficial when you're talking to kids, or you're in sales, or you're an attorney, or you're a doctor and your patient is lying to you to get that next Valium prescription or Xanax. So lie detection is important for us, just to know whether or not there's a likelihood of deception. And there is no machine on earth that can detect lies. A polygraph machine, I am a polygraph examiner. A polygraph machine is the biggest con in the history of America, including the guy who invented the polygraph machine publicly stated that he regretted doing so because the police were using it as a lie detector. And to this day, I have no idea why this thing is still considered to be scientific. I'm happy that it's not allowed as courtroom evidence in the evidence rules, but there is no machine that can detect lies. And if anybody wants an entire mini course on how to beat a lie detector, I've got an article about that. That's I think on the internet somewhere. We have to read behavior using clusters. And this is the reason that the highest deception score a behavior can have is 4.0. We don't get to the deception range until that behavior reaches an 11. So I know if I'm in this conversation and I see somebody doing something that might be deceptive, like touching their face, that's still a 4. It's still a 4. So we're not going to see one of these gray behaviors on the behavioral table and say, oh, this guy's lying because he just touched his face. That can't happen. That's not deceptive. So we have to read in clusters. And next, the deceptive behaviors, or the behaviors that show that we're stressful to say something, increase with stakes. The stakes go up. So in a police example, we might say, John, I really, we've been talking for a little while and I've come to like you a lot. And since we've gotten to know each other, I wanted to make sure that I tell you before I ask you this question, I want to make sure that you think really carefully before you answer this next question. So I'm raising the stakes before, and I didn't even say anything's going to happen. If I give you a photograph of a golf ball and tell you to convince somebody across the table that you're looking at a bar stool, you don't give a shit about the consequences. So there's not going to be very many deception indicators. But if I take the same scenario, and if you don't convince them that you're looking at a bar stool, you owe me $1,000. Now the stakes go up and your deceptive behavior will go up because I'm increasing the stress. I'm increasing the stress and the perception of the severity of consequences. Perception of the severity of consequences. And in a domestic situation, a wife is talking to her husband and says, who's this girl, Nicole, that you've been texting in your phone? And he starts saying, oh, you know, it's some girl from work, and I'm not sure how the chat history got deleted. Oh, that's weird. But if she started that question by raising the stakes, she would have increased the deception indicators. So she says, hey, I just got off the phone with Verizon, and I've been doing a lot of research on this. I'm sorry, I just kind of went off the deep end here, but I would like to hear from you who this person is. So now the stakes are high. We've raised the stakes. Next, we start lying at age 2. And this is not being deceptive. This is when we need attention from our parents, and I realize I don't need to wait to get attention. I can cry when my diaper's not dirty. I can cry when I'm not hungry just to make my parents come over. So we learn that I can perform an action to get what I want. And that's our first lesson in deception before we can talk. Most of us. Certainly me. And finally here, for anybody that hasn't read it, I highly recommend it. Malcolm Gladwell's most recent book is called Talking to Strangers. And it talks a lot about this. And this is everybody being affected by something called the truth bias. And the truth bias means that if I like somebody, not just my spouse or my kids, but if I even have a little bit of a rapport with a person, my brain will literally delete deceptive indicators from my awareness. It will get rid of them. So I don't even see them. And it's so ingrained in us that we've all heard the story about the woman whose husband is cheating on her, and everybody in the whole neighborhood knows about it except for her. She's the only one that's kind of blind to it. And we can get sucked into the truth bias with our clients, with people that we're persuading, with our patients. If they look like us, if they're the same race as us, according to research, or even if their first name starts with the same sound as ours. So if I'm interrogating a guy named Chuck, for example, I might be in that interrogation room and start suffering the truth bias. And while there's no vaccination to get rid of the truth bias, it's really good to know before going into the conversation, is there a possibility for me to suffer from it? That way your brain will at least be aware of it before you go into the room. And we'll cover our first deception indicator here, and we'll continue up in the next session after this. So the first one is called hesitancy. And if you're holding the behavioral table of elements, or you have one, we're going from left to right on the bottom row of the whole table. And hesitancy takes place in 2 forms. The first one is an unusual pause before a person answers a question. And this means that they are pausing more than they normally do. We've been in a conversation with them. We know what's unusual for that person before they answer. That's it. The second way that we do hesitancy is called a direct question repetition. So if I was to ask somebody, what did you do on Saturday night? And they repeat back. They say, what did I do on Saturday night? That is a direct repetition. If they have partial repetition, a partial repetition is not deceptive. A partial repetition might sound like I asked the question, what did you guys do on Saturday night? And the person says, Saturday night, we just went out for drinks. So the partial repetition is just typically for clarification. The hesitancy is there to buy time, to make sure they get the story straight, to make sure their story is aligned and they're a little bit more believable. So unusual pause and direct repetition of the question. And with that, I'll see you in the next session.